Awesome. Yeah, so this session will be recorded. This is our community call for Webrecorder. We're excited to have everybody joining. Thanks for coming. Hopefully this will be informative and a little bit fun. If you don't know what Webrecorder is at all, we're a project that is building tools that specialize in a user-driven form of web archiving, which is where the user is able to direct the archiving process through their browser. So Webrecorder started off as Webrecorder.io, a web archiving service for Rhizome in 2016. And in 2020, it became independent. The team is Ilya Kreymer, who is our lead developer, me, Emma Dickson, a generalist developer, and Lorena, who's our community manager. Our goals are broadly basically to advance the ability of everyone to use web archiving, capture, and replay. Our project is focused on advancing open source software development and research in the following areas. Basically, our goal is to make it so that we have tools that are easy enough that everybody who's interested would be able to create a web archive, store it, and host it.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. Yeah, and I wanted to, so we're restarting our community calls. We took a break over the summer. I wanted to kind of start with some news that we have. So we actually are going to, Webrecorder is going to be a subcontract on 2 grant projects. So we're really excited about that. One is a collaboration with the ReproZip team at NYU, and Webrecorder will be a partner on this IMLS grant. The idea is that we'll be working with ReproZip team to enable preserving web servers using the ReproZip software, and essentially presenting that along with web archives. So they actually did a prototype a couple years ago of this approach, and we're going to kind of essentially extend this idea and kind of make it more robust and useful. And the idea is to, in addition to the high fidelity web archiving that Webrecorder does, also use ReproZip, which is kind of like essentially almost like a Webrecorder from the server that can record server interactions and then put them in a Docker container. And so that's kind of the plan. It's just starting this month. So there's a link to that. And then the other collaboration that we'll have is actually also through NYU, but we'll be working more closely with Portico in helping essentially create automations for archiving some of these digital publishing platforms like Scalar, Fulcrum, and Manifold. And this is a part of a much larger grant. Webrecorder just has a small part on this, essentially creating, extending our BrowserTricks crawler system to be able to eventually archive these digital platforms automatically. So that's those are some of our kind of current collaborations. We of course welcome new collaborations. If you have a web archiving project in mind that we could assist us, definitely reach out to us. You can talk to us, or actually probably just send us an email. And then mostly I just kind of wanted to briefly cover some of the updates to our tools that we've developed over the last few months. So with Archive Webpage, that is our in-browser extension and desktop app. Just recently added a feature to be able to import existing WAXI and WARC files into Archive Webpage. So previously that wasn't possible. So now if you've previously archived from Archive Webpage, downloaded the file, or have a WARC file from elsewhere, you should be able to import that into Archive Webpage. And I'm was going to do a quick demo. So let's see if this. Yeah, so we now have the the top of the archive web page extension has been updated. So now there's a import archive button, and from here you can choose. You can basically choose a work file or a Waxy file and import it. And by default, it'll go into a new collection. So this is actually a test case I've been testing for Anissa, who I know is here. Yeah, so that's the idea. You could also import existing files into an existing collection. So if you click on this button, then you'll have the option to import into an existing collection. So hopefully this will work reasonably well. I haven't yet tested with very large archives, but I would say up to a few gigabytes, I think this should work reasonably well. Another option that we have that was recently added is the ability to download. So mostly we recommend the Waxy format for fast replay. If you want to make your web archives available through Replay Webpage, which we'll cover next, we definitely recommend this format. But if you're using existing systems, you may also want to download just the work. And so we have work 1.1 and also work 1.0 downloads available now. And the main difference is that the time precision on work 1.0 is limited to seconds, whereas with work 1.1, they are at, I believe, milliseconds. So hopefully this will make it flexible for folks that are then ingesting these work files into other systems. Yeah, and then also, yeah, so that's kind of the latest on archive web page. The other, another big update, and this is all thanks to Lorena, is that we now have our user guide is available in both English and Spanish. And again, this is all our community manager, Lorena, who worked with us to translate this, and also had some help from, I believe, actually, I think that it was also helped by the folks at UNAM with some of the text. Yeah, so essentially the entire guide is now available in English and Spanish, and you can switch between them here easily. And yeah, so I think that's pretty exciting, since we now also have the ability to add additional languages thanks to the kind of the way Lorena set this up. We now have can add additional language collections in the guide. So if there's additional, yeah, if you have requests for additional translations or want to work with us, let us know, and we can add that. So hopefully this will help make these tools more accessible to the broader community. And so next, briefly, I wanted to cover Replay Webpage. So Replay Webpage is the replay system component that works along with Archive Webpage. It is used to render Waxy files and work files in the browser. Recent update is that it now supports the Ruffle emulator fully in both the desktop app and the web version, since native Flash support is no longer available. So that was added, I think, within the last month or two. So you should be able to use Replay Webpage to browse any Flash-based sites that Ruffle supports, which is not all Flash, but definitely older Flash sites should work. Yeah, you could also use Replay Webpage to load web archives to institutional repositories. They just had, I think yesterday there was a blog post from, I believe, Stanford University Libraries where they're doing that. Wanted to highlight that and kind of show an example of that. I'll just go in this tab. And so essentially what they're doing is that they're loading, or actually in this case, they basically have their kind of digital repository. So in this case, Instagram captures that are loaded directly from replay web page. And so I think it's not yet fully integrated, but basically they have a link here to replay web page where the data is actually coming from their digital repository. Yeah, I think that's kind of I think this is a really powerful way for institutions that don't necessarily have the resources to run custom web archiving software or essentially just want to integrate web archives into their existing repositories, can use this approach to essentially just link to a replay web page and load their web archives that way. It's also possible to embed replay web page, which is sort of the next step, where you could actually have it running inside another site fully. And so we're kind of exploring that possibility as well. That was also kind of done with a previous collaboration with these projects, also created for, in this case, for Stanford University Press, where we actually have the embedded viewer for a replay web page running inside of another site. Yeah, wanted to kind of related to that, wanted to highlight kind of the some of the usage stats for this. We actually, so apparently this is kind of exciting to see that we actually have this kind of stats tracking from the CDN. And so currently replay web page appears to be getting 8,000 hits a month for the embedded use case. So not entirely sure where it's being used, but that's kind of exciting to see that folks are using the embedded viewer. Yeah, and so essentially, and this actually tracks just the embedded viewer. If you're just linking to replay web page, that's not included. So we actually don't know the full usage currently, since we're not tracking that data, but this is from the CDN, that when you embed replay web page, it will, those stats will be added here. Yeah, so then yeah, so again, if you like to integrate a replay web page into your systems and kind of have it work with your digital repositories, you can look at some of these examples from Stanford. Also reach out to us and we'll be happy to help with that. So another tool I want to talk about is Browserx Crawler, which is our command line desktop, or sorry, command line based, not yet desktop, but automated crawling system. And over the summer, we released the 0.4 release, which introduced support for conditional block rules for parts of a page. Essentially the ability to, for example, which can be used to block certain ad URLs, and it can also allow things like blocking YouTube videos, except if it's from a specific channel. And on this work, we collaborated with Karen Hansen from Portico for this work, and now that's part of the Browserx Crawler release. And so this should allow for kind of very fine-grained crawling requirements, where you could actually have the scope of a page or have the scope of a crawl that crawls certain pages, but then if you need to exclude certain parts of a page, such as certain external iframes, or even ads, or really anything that can be expressed as a regular expression, that should be possible in this latest release. In the next release of Browserx Crawler, we will have support for gracefully stopping and restarting the crawl. Essentially, if a crawl needs to be interrupted, it'll be possible for it to save the crawl state to a crawl config file, which is currently YAML based, and then you can actually restart the crawl with that same config and kind of pick up where the crawl was left off previously. So it essentially saves the list of URLs that were crawled, the frontier URLs that are still in the queue, yeah, so that I think should be useful for a number of different scenarios. There's also a way to save the crawl state to Redis, so it's also kind of stored in external cache. That should also make it possible to dynamically scale up crawling. So, for example, if you start one instance of BrowserX crawler and you save the state to Redis, you can then potentially start another instance running at the same time to speed up the crawl. This is still a bit experimental, but yeah, that's basically something that will be part of the 050 release of BrowserX crawler. Finally, another update is with PyWB, which is our kind of large scale Wayback Machine implementation. This tool has also had a number of updates. Most of this work is supported by a contract with the IEPC that's been ongoing over the past year. The 2.6 release of PyWB included support for built-in support for localization, including switching languages dynamically, kind of more extensive access control system, including support for embargoing certain URLs for a date range, and kind of, yeah, essentially various additional access control settings, including different rules for when users are accessing it publicly or privately, and kind of a bunch of documentation to go along with all of that. So there's a blog post about that that kind of links to all the documentation. And what is also on the radar is a 2.7 release, which will have a new UI, a new banner UI and a new calendar. And I've been working with a friend of mine in the Bay Area here, who's also a front-end developer, named Ivan Velov, and he's done a lot of work to help out with this new UI. And so I'll do a quick demo of that, and it'll be available for interactive testing shortly as well. So here is actually kind of the new PyWB UI. It's still not quite finalized, but getting there. And so it kind of supports kind of the if you're familiar with Wayback Machines, this is kind of the sort of the classical view there. There's a spark lines here, and then we have specific captures, and this actually has the ability to zoom in. So kind of it should actually support, for example, zooming into certain levels. So if there's like a very dense area, you can actually click on some of these and be able to zoom in to the exact captures. So this is still kind of, we're still finalizing this. And in this case, this actually is connected to the UK Web Archive data set. So it's a dev instance that's connected to that data. Yeah, and so this will be in the 2.7.0 release of PyWB, and of course the old UI will still be there as well, and it will be an option to toggle on this new UI. Yeah, so we're still, and this will be ready for testing fairly soon. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think this will kind of help navigate for larger archives that use PyWB. This will hopefully be useful in making it possible to navigate kind of some of these essentially pages with a lot of data. Yeah, so I think we're yeah, I think we can leave the rest of the time for Q&A, and I know we kind of covered a lot of different things, and yeah, I'll be happy to hear some of your questions and feedback in general about all of this.